And we're live. Welcome to today's show. So, here's what we're talking about today. In today's evolving experience landscape, attractions are not just about thrill rides, but about delivering rich, immersive experiences. And if you want to explore how edge technologies and like virtual reality and personalization are redefining the way guests interact with attractions and how they enjoy the attractions, then you are going to love today's guest, who just told me that they are an advocate for the guest experience. And yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation. So, just to get started, I am your host, Sondra Shannon, CEO of Gatemaster Technology. This is today's Live with Sondra. And if you caught yesterday's pop-up show, I talked a bit about good problems that you have in your business that signify growth and professional development. And I want to introduce you to today's very special guest who describes herself as a performance ninja. And she brings order to the messiness of growth and development of businesses. So please give a warm welcome to the show, Mary Tannous. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you,
Hello.
Sondra.
Of course. Thank you for being here today. Now, before we jump into all of the gooiness that I know we're going to talk about because we were at pre-show having a great conversation, will you tell the audience today a little bit about who you are, your experience in the attractions, what you love about attractions? I have a saying here, and that is that once you've been in attractions, you are always an attractions person because it's a way of life. And
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
and I'd love to hear your experience, how you got started and where you're going.
So this takes me back over 20 years ago when it all started. I came from accounting background, believe it or not, and now I talk to my husband because he's an accountant, and I'm like, "Oh, you accountants! I don't know how you do it," but I ended up joining the industry through Gateway Ticketing, and that was an amazing journey that opened the whole world of adventure to my career. And I went into customer success and worked with clients all over the world that just brought that amazing feeling belonging to this industry. And I discovered so much about what I love and my passion to technology and problem solving and working with clients to maximize results and the guest experience aspect of things. And where I am today, basically not only working with the industry and hospitality and technology, but across many verticals to take all that knowledge of operations that I gathered through my experience, and as well as strategy. I'm a big fan of strategy because to me, strategy is the map to success. If you don't have a strategy, tools, there's so many tools out there, and there's businesses have access to tons and tons with the way technology is evolving, but unless you know where you're going and have the right team behind it, you cannot achieve. So I focus on three things in my career, and my consulting work is one: system, process, and people, because that's the recipe to success.
100% agree. System, process, and people. I love that. The three P's, right? You get to explore all of those things with businesses. And it is an interesting thing because, I think a lot of business owners or even, operators, they are fantastic at the works that they do, like the creating the experiences, the visions behind all of that.
Hmm.
And but there's this part of business that even I've had to stumble into in order to be successful at what I do. And that is realizing that, you know, process is important. That's going to be a break point in the business for sure.
Yep.
People, I can't build this business or any business without people. We work side by side with our attraction partners, and that's a people game, right? Like you said. So you said process, people, and there was one more,
Systems.
systems. Certainly,
Technology, right? Yeah. Yep.
yeah, certainly systems. There is a point in businesses where we recognize that systems are going to be something that a business has to look at seriously in order to scale themselves.
Mhm.
Because I think the
Absolutely.
systems are what allow us to go beyond the individual person and duplicate at rates of speed that we can't do on our own, right? So this is why I'm excited about this, because we're talking beyond the roller coaster today and how attractions are integrating cutting edge technology and personalization to create truly immersive experiences.
And
So,
personalization, that's like the magic word, because if we're talking guests, we're talking personalization. And I know that we're going to talk a lot about it, but to me, that's where it all starts. We've got, what is attraction? What is our industry about? It's all about creating a memory, right? And
right.
memories that are lasting, creating memories that are worth repeating, because
Yes.
that's where loyalty comes from, right?
Yep.
There's so much competition. The world has opened up to many potential, so much potential, and then guests have access to the best of the best through social media, through everything that they have access to right now, with how open the world is, right? But it just comes down to personalization and the technology behind it, and how it's all created to provide that maximum experience where people will say, okay, I feel so good, I want to come back again.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I've had on this show a couple of Hershey uh, people who are working, one in food and beverage and one in their systems.
Hmm.
And one of the things that really resonated with me about what both of them brought up into the conversation, and you're bringing this up too, is that those that are focusing on the guest experience are excelling right now,
Hmm.
because we're seeing amazing things happening in this industry. I mean, there is. I had a friend that I was just got to see last week at the summit, and he's working on virtual reality technology, and so we know that these experiences are going beyond what we could have ever imagined 20 years ago. Right? I started with
Absolutely.
Qzar in the late 90s, so I was a
Hmm.
GM for Qzar, and interesting enough, when we talk about systems, process, and people, we sold that, or my our owner sold our location because we didn't know how to scale back then. This was
Hmm.
the late 90s. We couldn't grow beyond where we were. So we ended up selling the company. And I think a lot of businesses find themselves in that predicament because they're not familiar with the business strategies that it's going
Correct.
to take to scale a business past the point that you're at right now. And this
Hmm.
is something that I had a pop-up show yesterday talking about good problems in businesses, like the problems you want to have, the problems that indicate success, that say that it is time for us to do better. And that might
Exactly.
mean strategy. That might mean that we've got to come up with ways to um, be better at what we're doing. So, really looking at personal, professional development. Well, actually, I'm curious. How do you feel about professional development, and what's your take on all of that? Because I understand, as I understand it, you are helping businesses scale. So, is professional development a big part of what you do?
It's a big part of it, because again, if we bring the systems and the process and we don't have the people that can execute on it, can understand why it's being done, then why we're doing all of this, it's not going to work, right?
Right,
um at the end, people are who the ones that create those systems and processes. So if we start with the right people with the right skills, and you know what, this opens a whole big topic. I had a conversation yesterday with a business owner talking about the people he wants to hire for his team, and I'm asking him, okay, who are you hiring and why, and what are you looking for? And to me, I want to see businesses looking more and more, rather than focusing on the experience and knowing the how to for a long time, the skill set that can grow into that how to, right? Because if we're going to just take that cookie cutter approach in people and not look for the quality, it's the air to the business, it's basically what brings life to it, right? Especially when we're talking about our industry, every interaction that our guests are having with people is the biggest contributor to the success of that attraction. Even
right,
if they have the best technology, the best environment, the best rides, no matter what it is, if you have a bad experience with the guest from a person to person perspective, that whole thing is not going to work, right?
yeah,
Because it starts with, if we talk strategy, to me it starts with the vision. And as a leader, you need to be very clear at the vision and the goals, the it becomes the go-to for all of your staff and team to address any problem that comes their way, to make sure that whatever they do is aligned with that vision, is aligned with that plan and goal in mind that we're all as a team trying to accomplish, right? And once that happens, then cascading that in a clear communication where they understand the what and the how, but they're part of that how. They understand how they relate to that how. So it's not a matter of me telling somebody, okay, I want you, when every guest comes in, I want you to greet them with a smile, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not good enough, because I want them to know, why are you greeting them with a smile? What are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And what happens if you don't, right?
Yeah.
The impact of your work. And that is part of also every person behind a company, because even I talk to accountants and the people behind the scenes, the financial team, right? They are also, even though if they're not guest facing, but there are some interactions in the processes that they put in place, in the reports that they ask for, and that all triggers somehow, some way, to the guest experience. So nobody is in an attraction or in a business is clear from having full responsibility of that vision and how they can impact it in everything they do,
Right.
you know.
Well, I have a saying here too, like we have to figure out how to, for my HR team and the people
Mhm,
that, serve on our leadership team that are serving the rest of the team in helping them get to where they want to go. And one of the things that we talk about often and we've learned over the years is hiring for attitude, right?
mhm,
Like,
exactly,
that's what Disney's doing. Because I've never had somebody not greet me with a smile when I've been at
exactly.
Disneyland or Disney World,
Yeah.
and I love what you said about the mission and the vision, having clarity on what that is. For
Mhm,
us here, our mission is pretty simple, and it's to enhance the guest satisfaction through proven innovative technology and legendary service. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with fellow team members where I'm saying, is that in line with making sure these attractions massively succeed? And it makes it real easy to prioritize what we're doing in the
mhm,
business as well. Because if it doesn't, then it's not really a part of our mission. It's not part of who we are. But in
exactly.
addition to that, understanding the vision of where we're going and allowing people to see themselves in that future, which is interesting that you brought that up because I was talking um, to somebody last week at the
I
Summit One
apologize.
Vanderbilt IAPA event, and they were discussing. We were in a group, so there was a group of us discussing how in this industry, I think that there is a little bit of a need for people to understand, especially young people, young professionals, that you can go from a ride operator to a GM. I mean, that was my experience, and
Mhm.
then it led to this. You know, I'm sad to say there wasn't a strategy behind it, but there was a love of the industry and a love for what I was doing. And I think sometimes passion and purpose
It's an
can,
embedded strategy. It's
right.
like driven from the
Yeah.
inside. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think I really love what you brought up there because I think that there are some issues in the industry right now with regards to young professionals seeing themselves in the future of this industry, right?
Yeah.
And how much we need them to play a role in the future of what's happening because hospitality it historically a lot of the values of hospitality have been passed down through generations.
Mhm.
We lost a little of that in the pandemic, would you say?
I 100%, because there was lack of accessibility to the right resources, and that's where the hiring had to take a different twist to keep business going, and pivoting and adapting as well. So it put everybody under a lot of pressure, and that the price to that is obviously the level of service and the commitment to that
Sure.
excellence, right? And that's what we really need to bring back, because we all deserve it. Our guests deserve it. Our businesses deserve it. I mean, in every interaction, it's a showcase of what is the possibility. And if we're talking about an industry where it's all about possibilities, then we need to show what a possibility of a guest experience looks like, right? And it starts with
Yeah.
the people, because you mentioned Disney. That's what they look for, like the attitude, and then they go through amazing amount of training to empower them with the tools to be
Right.
able to actually execute to that highest level, for that seamless journey, for that consistency across everywhere you go. And that's the power of it. Yeah, right. And I always say, if they can do it, everybody can do it.
They can't.
It
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
even look at. Do you don't? Are you familiar with In-N-Out Burger? I'm from Southern
Of
California,
course, it's
so
delicious.
yeah, I grew up eating In-N-Out, and we actually are getting one right here down the road from me. It's the first one, so I'm super excited because it's the taste of home for me. But
Yeah.
what a reason I bring them up is because they're hiring right now,
Mhm.
and the signs starting at $22 an hour, which is fantastic. But what I think even more so than what they're paying for just entry level positions is that alongside that is going to be a lot of training. They're
Mhm.
preparing these teams so that every time you go to In-N-Out, you have the same experience, you get the same delicious food, no matter if it's here in Denver or in Southern
The
California.
consistency.
The
Yep.
the hospitality is the same.
Mhm.
So this goes back to process and systems, right? Process systems and people, really, at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Um, realizing that they've got that down. That's a turnkey part of their product offering and who they are as a business. And
100%.
I thought that was fascinating when I saw that they're and I have a cousin who worked for In-N-Out for a number of years, who shared a lot of how they develop these processes to ensure that that's the same product every time. But that's what we want to create in these attraction businesses, is
But
the
I
same
also like to
experience.
challenge that, because sometimes that's something that's where the twist is, and adaptability is needed, because you also
Sure.
want to cater to your audience, right? So if you're within a certain place and area, that's one thing. But let's say when you take it global, that's where like that creativity then comes to place, right? So I
Right.
always say there's nothing set in stone. The way the world is going, and the innovation, and the high expectations of Gen Z, and like alpha the alpha generation. This is where the whole virtual reality and AR and all of that came to life, is because of their high expectations.
Yeah.
And adapting, sometimes the cookie cutter approach is a brilliant way of doing business, because that's efficiency, that's consistency, everything that you just talked about, which is amazing. But also sometimes I always challenge that to say, well, there are times where you cannot do that, right? You need to adhere to your audience and to your guests, to adapt to their needs, because every area, every location can be different, and
Yeah.
the needs can change.
Well, I love that because one area that clearly matters too is I had a guest on the show recently, who is an advocate for the disabled community and
Mhm.
how we can better serve them, and not just better serve them, but the size of the opportunity that there is in making sure that they have a place in our attractions, right? Because there's a financial opportunity there too. I mean, it's like $8 trillion in expendable income from that community that a
Mhm.
lot of attractions don't realize they're not even tapping into. But I think to your point, it takes creativity to make that also a great experience for somebody who might have needs outside of the everyday process that we're doing, and how do we make those accommodations? It's going to take creativity to some degree.
And if we apply that to our attraction industry, right? So back to leadership. So a globe, for example, a corporate company that has attractions in different parts of the US or maybe abroad, this is where it gets very tricky. And I like to invite those leaders to, again, that's where the strategy comes key, because the excellence is in the details, right? And maybe there's something that them and their teams have been used to, for example, at a certain way of doing things in the US, but then taking that outside the US, or tapping into communities that have different needs, like you said, accessibility, a certain level of compliancy, sustainability rules, generation differences,
Yeah.
languages, cultures.
right?
That's where it gets definitely more exciting if we want it to, and challenging. That's a problem that a business can face because they may not perform to the same level, and that's where adaptability will need to happen
Yeah.
and switching in the strategy.
It's interesting. A friend of mine who used to be the GM for she was a GM for Kentucky Kingdom when they reopened, I think back in 2014. And one of the things that she shared with me that she did was her team was often given like several different scenarios that they could apply and adapt to situations with guests, so that they always had tools, right?
I
Because
love
that's
it. The role playing. Yeah. Yep.
right. But they are given like tools,
Mm-hmm.
and they're empowered by that because now they know that they can adapt wwhatever they need to for the
Mm-hmm.
situation that they're in, but that guest always gets delivered an experience that makes sense for the business, right? Because
100%.
there are going to be rules in the business if you have a mission and vision and values that you're following.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious because I know some of the audience here is dying to hear a little bit more about the technology and
Mm-hmm.
how that seamlessly integrates to enhance guest experience throughout their visits. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the growing trends that we see in technology. I know for us, we really pride ourselves on being good stewards of that first touch that many guests have with a lot of the attractions that we serve, simply because, you know, buying the ticket's the first step, right? We got to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
And, but from your take, what do you see happening with technology and the guest experience?
If we look back, you and I, 15 years ago, if you remember when the whole mobile ticketing started, and it was like the whole big focus of, oh, I can buy online, and attractions were offering special, pricing for it, and maybe adding convenience fees, and there was so many things going on back then. Now it's expected. If you don't have it, something is wrong, right? And
Right.
what I can say, the way it's going, again, because of Gen Z and like the high expectations, the high tech savvy generation. They don't want to be part, they don't want to just walk around and engage the senses of watching and listening. They actually want to be part of the experience, and they want to see more and more, taking them to places that it's not real. It's a place of imagination, a place of where they have choices. They're rebels. The difference between my 18-year-old, when I used to take him to all the attractions of that we've been to, and then versus my 8-year-old. The 18-year-old back then so excited about seeing a performance, or we used to like love, for example, like Hershey's, the music performances, or like the seeing certain characters walking around the park. Wow, that's amazing. My 8-year-old now, that's not, and then he's like, okay, yeah, great, but where is the VR? Where is the engagement? Where is me picking what I want to see and do in this ride? So the expectation is becoming more and more towards that side of the technology, where we're allowing guests to choose. We're giving them options to go beyond what they're seeing, taking them to worlds that they don't exist. But also, in addition to that, that actually opens a lot of doors to attractions, because now you're able to maximize, maybe the ability to offer more within less. So meaning you have a space issue, create a virtual reality experience that allows you to, for example, rather than bringing all these dinosaur experience to, like, a park that, well, kids love dinosaurs, right? You create a VR experience that allows them to live it, to feel it, to sense it, to smell it, but you don't have to find that big space for it, right? So it also solved some problems on the attraction side, to offer additional experiences that they can tap into additional more audience. They can tap into guests that maybe they were not interested in what's being offered. Now, because of what's being offered, they are more engaged and satisfied. It's just, this is where it's all going. In addition to that, personalization, with AI becoming so, the power that it has given to the data analysis and data accessibility, personalization is going to continue to grow more and more, where it's almost like your guests are going to start thinking, are they reading my mind?
Right.
Like, how did they know this is what I want? This is almost becoming an expectation, because if it's not done, guests are walking away.
Yeah.
There's not as much tolerance. You and I were probably okay, you know uh, 15, 20 years ago, to stand in line and just wait, because that's what everybody did. But now I want to be able to go to a mobile app and see what's going on, so that I can plan my journey. I even wanted the mobile app to plan my journey for me based on what I want, and
Yeah.
based on my kids' ages. I want to plug it in and it creates my itinerary for me. I want it to know what kind of offers I want. I want it to, allow me to book my food experience, which again, a family with kids on vacation, the last thing after, standing in line for so long and queuing, standing in another line to eat. Imagine in the heat and all that. I mean, it still happens today, but more and more guests are not tolerating that anymore, and it's a matter of now finding alternatives to create that seamless experience, that journey of luxury guest experience, let's call it, to that it's not luxury anymore, it's more expected, right?
Well, see,
um
that's the thing. And I love that you're saying this luxury experience because I'm a big advocate for that too. I do talk a lot about standing in line with
mhm.
hangry children. That is not a great experience for mom.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
not.
and one of the things that I truly believe is that as women, we might be the CEO of our homes. I mean, let's say I would venture to say all of us are, because
Mhm,
typically we know, and I mean, we can see this in our data that we've collected over the last 30 years, that it is the women in the households that are making these purchases for buying experience. So why would you want her then to go stand in line with a bunch of hangry little kids? I've been there
mhm.
many times,
Oh yeah.
um, because it challenges the experience, right? It challenges the satisfaction of the experience when she's there trying to manage that. And some of the tech that we see coming out right now, and even that we've deployed in some of our water parks, is like mobile ordering technology.
Mhm.
At first we were just trying to create convenience. We knew that it was going to be a little more accessible. So, that's part of it. But then what ended up happening is people spent more time with the menu because, like you said, they have access to more offers. They're not in a rush. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've stood in line, hangry kids, forgot to order half of what I wanted by the time I get up there. The poor attendant is that's behind the counter, they're just scrambling to make it all work. And so everybody's having a hard time. But when we put the buying into the hands of the consumer, make it a little easier, we're using technology to order food, we're seeing that the price per transaction, so they're making more in a transaction. And I believe it's because mom can sit down, sit with the menu, ask her kids what they want. They can continue to do what they're doing, and at some point that they either receive a text to come pick it up, or where are we delivering it? Because like you're saying, more and more parks are moving towards luxury experiences. Can't tell
It's
you
less
how many.
stressful.
It's
Exactly.
less stressful, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is you can't do that without technology. I believe
Mhm.
technology is what makes that a luxury experience to some degree, because your guest has full autonomy in what they're purchasing and investing in at that point. So I love what you said there. And I always say women are at least 50% of the users of the tech. We know that. I mean, just as somebody who's been in tech, I've spoke at a couple of women focused tech events, and over again hear that we have to realize that we are 50% of the population, so we're 50% of the users of technology, and we need to take into consideration some of the challenges that we might be bumping up against. I would venture to say, because of the data that we see, that women tend to be even, especially when we're talking water parks and theme parks and family experiences, they tend to be the majority of the buyers.
Absolutely. And you know what else? On the other side, on the business side, it creates a lot of efficiencies. You're starting now to gather better data. Your guests are more, happier. So you're able to utilize your resources, manpower, in a better way to provide a better experience because the pressure is less on them. And the more that it's done in advance, as we all know, the more they're actually going to end up spending when they come to the park because they're going to forget that they paid for all of everything that's been paid or in advance. So the more is the ability to provide that kind of, if we want to call it, a luxury experience, or I like to call it more personalized, like everybody feeling like
Yeah.
they're a VIP, that we're catering to their needs at the time they need it. It's a win-win because attractions will also see a huge bump into the guest experience, the revenue growth, as well as even a good culture within their teams, because their teams are also going to feel less pressure
Yes.
um, from the guests.
Yes, I love that. I love it because I think that it is important, and I think you're right. Like when I just for my kids and my personal experience outside of the professional experience that I have, when I'm looking to do something with the family, I never heard it said that way. That if you don't offer these kind of tools to your guests, they might think something's wrong. I can't tell you how many times I chose one venue over another for a birthday party simply because I could book it at
100%.
night, right?
I do that
And
all the time. Yes, absolutely. I don't have the time to go through it. I don't want to go through that pain. I want to be able to just know it all. But at the same time, we go back to strategy, right? These
yes,
tools are all available, but if it's not done right, it becomes a bigger reason for frustration, right? Connectivity, for example, I see that a lot where, okay, you offer all these tools, but the connectivity is very poor. Then what are we doing here? We're causing even more pain to the guest, and they're not
right.
able to utilize that experience, the flow of how it's being done. So it needs to really go through that, three P's, as you called it, or the triangle of success that I call it, like the process, the people, the systems, is what are we trying to accomplish? Go back to the strategy, because it's not a matter of just bringing those technologies. It doesn't fit everywhere. Some of it is not a matter of just because they do it, we do it. No. I think every attraction need to look at who are they catering to, what are their needs, what are we trying to accomplish. Are we trying to increase, for example, guest interaction, guest feedback, guest satisfaction? Are we trying to tap into another segment of of the market share that we can maybe adhere to? Are we trying to introduce something, a new product that we're trying to maximize the use of? It all comes down to the what are we trying to accomplish, and then we bring the right tools to address it. But these tools need to be well thought of. We need to have the right partnership. I'm sure, like, you hear it all the time where your customers come that use your software, and they're like, oh, we are bringing this other partner and they're doing XYZ, but then all of a sudden they find out that somehow it is interconnected to your product, and then you have to kind of come up with the development team and the resources to make it happen for them. Where if it's done properly in the design phase, right, bringing everybody together, understanding what that journey look like, bringing, it's a roundtable conversation. What are you trying to accomplish, and how does that, let's walk it from a guest experience standpoint. What does it look like, right? Who do we tap into along the journey? What softwares do we need to get involved in? What hardware does it affect? Signage, connectivity, everything, people, right?
Right.
People
Well,
along the way. It just blows my mind because I also do like undercover agent in some attractions, and I love to do it, right? Because it just allows me to like tap into so much more. I love the luxury experience, but I also like to go through the experience of, I want to see what it's like as it is, right? And it just drives me crazy when I ask somebody a question and they're like, oh, I don't know, this is not my area, or this is not my department, or this is not what I do. Please go, walk to the left, to the right, down the hill. You'll see a booth there, ask them. No, No, that's not how it works. Everybody within that attraction should be, you don't have to all have the answers. Nobody has all the answers. It's okay. But that's part of the training and what we talked about earlier, professional development. How do we handle these situations where the last thing I'm going to do to this guest is point them to, somewhere, around the park that they're going to walk into, and then probably they're going to get there and be sent somewhere else because they cannot help them.
Yeah.
Cannot,
Well,
it's just, yeah.
to add to that, I have to say, one thing that I think is an interesting piece of tech that we're seeing being adopted more and more by attractions, and I know it's been really big in Broadway. We've seen it a lot in the sports and entertainment space. And what's interesting to me is like the development of AI and the chat that can be leveraged for that customer service aspect. So
Hmm.
even if the person that you walked up to doesn't have the answers, the answer could be, hey, let me show you how to talk to this bot who's going to be able to answer all those questions. At which point, many of them are moving, we're seeing guest service moving more towards the automation. And then, if that bot doesn't have the answers, they will connect you with the person who does. So it's a
Exactly.
seamless, easy experience. And I think to your point of what you were saying earlier, this next generation of people, they expect this.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that they want little interaction with the team, but it just goes to your point.
Minimal.
Right. But it goes to your point of, now we can creatively give the team members a solution for everything if we can adopt certain systems like the
Mhm.
AI. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's super cool
It's
technology.
powerful if it's done right, especially. Absolutely.
It's powerful if it's done right, and I think there are some companies that are doing it really well right now. And and even so far that now you could ask it. I'm a mom with 5 kids, and I'm coming on this day. What should I purchase? And these chat bots will just like give you hand deliver the entire experience, like you said, an itinerary of what you should be doing.
Exactly.
I mean, how nice is that?
Hmm. And how critical it is in the building phase, in the design phase, to keep every aspect of that answer in mind of who is reading it, right? Because that's part of the thing, the problems that I solve with companies. It's, again, AI is so accessible right now, but if you want to do this, you've got to also spend ample time designing, understanding who's your audience and what that answer can create in their world, right? Or not create in their world, that we need to be responsible for as businesses, right? Offering these services, because the last thing we want to do is introduce tools that will bring more pain, or introduce tools that will bring, less satisfaction because there's frustration, and not,
Yeah,
easy access to the right information that's needed. Yeah.
100%. And I think that's where the biggest, I hope that the audience that is listening today that are attractions who are looking to do better, to grow and scale their businesses,
Hmm.
who want to see a bigger, brighter future for these attractions that they're running, I hope what they take from this conversation is that strategy is important. Like you said, you have to have a strategy with technology. What is your technology strategy? Because if it's not a well thought out strategy, then we end up with tool fatigue. That's a real thing that professionals are facing today.
Yep.
If you've got 4 or 5 systems doing what one system could have done had you have just strategized and looked for the partner that can work side by side with you, I think that's an important point, right?
Hmm.
I I as a parent, I take my kids to a local theme park, and there's I do take issue. I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of like a secret shopper sometimes, even though they didn't pay me to be there. And they just I love like going into this as a consumer and then thinking about ways that we can improve that process,
Hmm.
even if it's not going to work for this particular park or I'm not exploring that with them. However, the thing that frustrates me to no end is there's a different system for cashless, there's a different system for season pass processing, there's a different system for day-to-day ticket sales, and it's hard to manage. Like, I do this for a living, and I realize that if I can't figure it out, I can only imagine what
It's overwhelming.
the customer's journey looks like for people who are, strategize, that aren't strategizing these things day to day. I mean, this is my job. So
Absolutely. And
I recognize that there are that is lacking, and that's why I said I hope the audience takes, if anything they take from this conversation. I love that you said that, because I think strategy is very, very important when implementing technology. And I don't care where it is, if it's in ticketing, that's just the only thing I can speak to is the ticketing and the point of sale. But when we start getting into other things like, the attractions and how that integrates, we did an attraction a few years back. It was a VR pirate ship museum,
mhm,
and they were it was a tourist attraction. What was interesting about this one is, as they would purchase tickets, they would say what language they spoke,
mhm,
and if they were coming as a group. There was all this set of questions, so that when they arrived and they put on the VR, they scanned their ticket, put on the augmented reality, not only did it translate into the language that they chose, and then it organized itself by the
joined them.
group,
Yep.
right?
With their group.
And
Yeah.
and that was just a well thought out strategy, an amazing,
Amazing.
well thought out strategy. It was
Mhm.
executed beautifully.
Yep.
And I think that those are the things that we're talking about here.
We're talking about, we're not, the goal here is to basically say it's possible.
Yeah,
That's the message. Because there's amazing tools out there, there's amazing skill sets out there. It's a matter of taking the leadership approach of saying, how can we do this better? Because we all deserve a better experience. Our guests deserve a better experience. Our attraction deserves a better reputation. Our team, we work hard as a team. Let's take it to that next level. Let's showcase, let's differentiate ourselves in thinking
yeah,
through these possibilities, right? Because again, it's the industry of possibilities. um, the other thing I want to tap into that you mentioned is when you said, taking your kids and being that secret shopper is feedback. At certain, back in the days, I was called the queen of feedback, and I love feedback. I think feedback is so powerful. If we talk about that data and AI, and data is as good as being utilized as it's been utilized, right?
sure.
Because you can dump data. I mean, I'm sure you get those, all these requests for reports, right? It's a very specific topic that we all smile deep inside when it gets asked, what reports do you have, right? Well, the question is, what do you want to see? It's not
Yeah,
about what I have, it's about what's your strategy, what data do you need to reflect. It's how are you going to collect that data, and what are you going to do with that data, right? Because data by itself is no good, but then when a guest comes to you and gives you feedback, that is golden, that's beautiful. Because that's the best feedback or data you can ever receive for free. You don't have to pay a penny for it. But training your staff to be able to take it and value it and respond to it, because what I see happening so much is that there's like this hidden ego of, oh, I cannot take that feedback. This is not my area of expertise, or there's that emotional connection to what we do. We all love what we do, but how
sure.
can we improve if we're not willing to take that feedback? Because that's where growth comes from, and that's where we tap into outside our comfort zone to grow.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought it, because I think you're right. I think there is like an emotional attachment that maybe clouds or muddies the waters for us when we receive feedback. But I'm 100% agreement with you. I think feedback is a gift. And, one thing that really helped me in not only my business, but also in the conversations that I have with my team, and even some of the parks that we work with that are just looking on how do they make use of the feedback, right? But one thing that I've come to realize in business, and one of my mentors taught me, is that the only emotion that belongs in business is celebration. And
Mhm.
I love that, simply because when I feel myself going into a place of ego, like you said, where maybe I can't suspend that enough to be able to take and hear what's being said to me, I'm like, is this a celebration moment or is this a learning moment, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because that's really the only way I look at it at this point. But I love that you brought that up, because I think, and I don't think that like our team members have big egos about things, but they might take it personally when really it's just
Correct.
it's 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 under having the open-mindedness to understand that problems are opportunities, feedback is a gift,
Hmm.
and anytime we are armed with information that helps us do better, the more we know, the better we can do, right?
Exactly.
And I think the real sad part about feedback is when we don't use it.
Hmm.
We don't use it to our advantage. We don't use it to be better. We don't use it as a teachable moment.
Hmm.
So I just the wealth of knowledge that you have is blowing my mind, and I know that we are approaching time. And I'm so grateful for how generous you were. And I know that we didn't even scratch the surface of what we came here to talk about.
We can talk for days. It's been great. Thank
We
you.
could, and I always say, hey, if that happens, that just means we got to have another conversation, and see what the feedback is from the audience that's listening. Because they might come up with something. There is a promise that I have to everyone here that's listening, and that is that if I don't have the answers, I'm going to find people like Mary who do, because this is how we are going to grow and bring an industry forward together. It's having conversations like this and with people like you who have the expertise and the experience and the attitude, right? The attitude that's important to make the changes that the future generations need to see us make in order to continue this industry in its full, I think, empowered space that we're going to be in the future. Because I think the future is just going to be so wild
Oh yeah.
and amazing. I mean, not only from what we see happening at attractions. I mean, I talk about this one ride all the time. I love Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm.
All of what they're doing. I had a friend who helped. I had a couple of friends actually who helped open that ride over at Epcot, and the things that they told me about the strategies that were necessary in order to make a ride like that do what it can do. Or even we look at Rise of the Resistance, for example. I mean, just
Mhm.
I think it's Rise of the Resistance was millions and millions of lines of code, like beyond what has ever been seen in the history of attractions ever.
Yep.
And I don't know if people recognize that, but that's strategy. That could have been an
Exactly.
awful experience had it not been done right, right? Because that
Absolutely.
right,
And it's yeah, unfortunately it can happen very easily if it's not well
right.
thought of. Yeah.
It's
But
not well thought of. So
as
thank you, Mary, for being here today.
yeah.
And I just would be remiss if I didn't give the audience a way to get a hold of you. How does someone watching today that wants to reach out to you? What would be the best way to get a hold of you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So Mary Tannous, you can find me. I'm all over social media. I speak about a lot of topics, and I love the engagement. So reach out to me, Mary G Tannous on Instagram, on TikTok. I mean, everywhere, Facebook, as well as, of course, email me, Mary at patriotconsultinggroup.com. And if there's any questions, they can reach out to you, of course, and you can connect me with them. I'm happy to talk to them. This industry is my baby. I absolutely love it. It brings my inner child, even though I work across many verticals right now, but this will always be my favorite. So thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for everybody that listened to us through this beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your insights. Well, so just to wrap up, we're going to wrap up this show, and let me just show you guys a couple of things. If you are like Mary and have expertise that you can share, expertise that help attractions be better at what they do, I want you to scan this QR code. I would love to have you on as a guest on this show, sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have and just helping us continue to advocate for an industry that I love. And I love what Mary said. It's her baby. And, for so many of us, that's how we feel about it. And there's so much information that attraction owners and operators need to have in order to provide the best possible experiences worth repeating, memories that need to be made, smiles that need to be put on faces. And so I'd love for you to come on the show and share that information. As always, if I don't have the information for you and you have a question and you need help in your attraction, if I don't have that, I'm going to find people like Mary who do and who can help us and can help you find what you need to be better at what you do. because we want to keep this going. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Mary, for being on the show. And we will see you next week. I've got a fantastic lineup of guests happening over the course of the next few weeks. I think we're booked all the way into July. So stay tuned and see who's going to be on the show. But otherwise, have a great rest of your week. If you're watching this on replay, hashtag replay so Mary and I know that you were here. And if you have any questions in the comments and you want me to connect you with Mary, please don't hesitate to just drop that in the comments below. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day.